guys. Can everybody see what is? Somebody mind telling me when am I blocking my face when I'm showing you those poll results, or can you guys see the poll results? Somebody weigh in real quick, put a check or a yes in the, okay.
Yes, you can.
All right, good. That's all right if my face is blocked, as long as you can see the poll results, good. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get into our session. Welcome to the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And we're going to go into just an icebreaker and a few ground rules. And I'll introduce myself. And I really hope this is the one thing that I want you to know is we are really in this learning together. This is the first virtual conference I've ever presented. I am really familiar with this topic. I've presented it in person many times. I have never done it virtually. I've been doing a lot of research on virtual presentations. So at the end, there is not an official evaluation to this, but I really would appreciate, I will be asking for you all, I'm going to be asking for a copy of the chat box at the end, just so that I can provide you, if anybody has an email that I need to email, or if you have feedback. I really rely heavily on your feedback, whether those are things that you love and you want to see more of, or whether they're things that are constructive and it just didn't work for you. I really want to know those things, because that's the only way that I can help my trainings. So please add those throughout in the chat box. You will not hurt my feelings. I will not go home crying. I am inviting you to give me your honest, vulnerable, candid feedback so I can do this better in the future. It's my first time. And it's okay to give that candid feedback, because it's the only way I'm going to grow. So feel free to put that in the chat box, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we are going to begin. You have chosen to come to the 5 dysfunctions of a team today. So this is one of the trainings that I am absolutely most passionate about. I am passionate about leadership, and as I have worked on different teams, been a part of different teams in many different roles over the years, whether it was as a leader myself, as a coach coming alongside, working within a role where I had upper level leadership, or I was at mid-level leadership. I have seen so many different dynamics of teams and the ways that they function or struggle to function. So this is something that is really close and near and dear to my heart, and my prayer today is that you will get the content that you need out of this. So, quick icebreaker. Just in the chat box, quickly write one thing you have learned from COVID thus far. One thing you've learned through all this. Scott, for some reason, I can't see the chat. What did I do?
So I'll chime in as you're finding that probably went behind your other window, but flexibility, elementary school teacher is hard. Don't cough in front of people. People need to be kind. They enjoy working from home. Patience. Mindfulness is key. Center yourself.
Love it.
Miss the office. Hardships of homeschooling. More loving working from home. And they are just scrolling through.
Yeah. Patience, resiliency.
It's a little difficult for me to read the chat box on here, so bear with me. I've got a team that's going to support me with that, and they're going to be looking at your questions as well. Thank you for weighing in. Every single one of you who are homeschooling right now, I hear you, I feel you. I am right there with you. I have not yet sold my children to the gypsies, but there's still time. But there are some amazing things that have happened too. So I've enjoyed being present with them, and I hope that you all have found some blessings in this as well, even though it's been really tough. Here's a little bit about me, just about some of my education, my experience, and just a personal fun fact about me. I love to sit on the porch, and I love to find ways to be a blessing to others. If you have any questions as we go, feel free to ask. As we prepare to engage today together, so just some basic housekeeping, and I'm so sorry, I'm really doing my best with the technology. I'm working on it. If you have any questions, please use the chat box. I have an amazing supportive team behind me who's going to be actually bringing up your questions to answer. So if you have a question, I know there are a lot of you, please ask it. Please put it in the chat box. Scott and Jessica, if they need to, and her team are going to just interrupt me during the session so that we can answer your question in real time instead of you having to wait until a point where you don't even care that it's a question anymore. So absolutely enter it in. If there is a question that I cannot answer or do not get to because there are so many of us, please put it in the chat box. Like I said, I'm going to be asking for a copy of that, and I will and please put your email in the chat box, and I will respond to it after the session. Please choose your mood today. I chose that song for a reason. It's often the most difficult to reflect on ourselves. So be open to reflect on the man in the mirror today. And even though your session is slotted for an hour, we have a little bit of a flexibility. And I'm going to use some of that flexibility if you don't mind. This is a session that normally runs a minimum of 90 minutes and can go much longer. So trimming it down has been kind of a challenge. So but I want to make sure that you get the content today that you need for this. So we will have it'll run about an hour and 25 minutes, but we will not interfere with your next session or your break, just so you know. And then we will have a 5 Dysfunctions raffle at the end. You must be present to win, but I am excited. There will be 3 prize winners, 3rd, 2nd, and grand prize. And like I said, this is my first presentation. Please be very candid in your feedback. I'm inviting it. I want it, genuinely. And thank you in advance for being willing to do it. Our objectives for today. So want you to come away with knowing what the 5 dysfunctions of a team are, being able to identify them. Really reflecting on what level your team is currently engaged in, and learning some new exercises to assist your team in growth. Now, because of our time, I have several exercises that I've provided. I'll give you examples of some of them, but we're not going to work through a lot of them because of the time, but they are in the PowerPoint, and that PowerPoint will be accessible to you after the session. So you'll be able to take these back and actually utilize them with your teams, or they've been already attached. I would like to challenge you to commit to implementing at least 1 or more of these strategies within the next 48 hours. Within the next 48, just because typically it's easy to get, we leave these conferences, we're pumped, we're excited, it's going to be amazing, and then we get back into the routine of things and our consistency starts to lack. So really challenge yourself to start to utilize these tools as quickly as possible so that you can start to develop some new habits. Also, allow yourselves through this to wonder, to ponder, to just consider different things. Really come with an open mind, come with a real mind. Ask the hard questions. I am a huge fan of people asking the hard questions. Don't, sugarcoat it, be professional, be respectful, but feel welcome to challenge me. Feel welcome to ask. Feel welcome to disagree. Feel welcome to engage in healthy conflict. I'm inviting you to do so. And also take care of yourself. Let yourself be present in this session. I have my cup of coffee. Have a snack with you. Have your pillow. Have your cozy blanket. Like, do whatever you need to do to make yourself comfortable so that you can get the most out of this. As we go into the 5 dysfunctions, this is very much a pyramid framework. So what you'll see is the absence of trust at the base. We're going to talk about fear of conflict, lack of commitment, avoidance of accountability, and inattention to results. We will spend the most time on the absence of trust. And we're spending the most time there because this is the absolute foundation of this entire pyramid. And if any of these elements are missing, it is going to very much impact how functional your team is able to be at a really healthy level, and it's at most optimal level. But without trust, there will be a lot of challenges, and you'll be limited in how much you can move forward authentically. So this is a little tool that I provided, an organizational climate check that was developed by Patrick Lencioni. He is the author of the 5 Dysfunctions of the Team. He is the author of some other incredible leadership books. And this is a really good way to get a temperature on your organization. Giving this tool to your team, asking them not to overthink the statements, asking them to fill it out from their perspective, and then coming together to talk about your scores. And I would encourage you to take this back to your team and use it. It asks if your team members are passionate and unguarded in the discussion of issues. Do they call out people's deficiencies or unproductive behaviors? Do they know what their peers are working on? Do they know how to contribute to the collective good of the team? Do they openly admit their weaknesses and mistakes? We're going to get into a lot of this, but this will give you a really good baseline before going into anything about what each of your team members honestly feels about working within the organization and how they feel about it being effective, about it being healthy, about it creating a place of trust. And you'll see that they'll have different perspectives on why that is the way that is. So a leader should not take credit when things go right if they're not willing to accept the responsibility when things go wrong. And one of the top things I'm going to ask you to do today is, even that when we think about a functional team and we think about dysfunctional teams, it's really easy to be like, yep, my team is the one that's dysfunctional. I can tell you here, 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 and here that this isn't working, and this is why, and this is what could go better, and this is what we should be doing, and this is what we could be doing. But at the end of the day, the very first thing we need to look at, and this is where we're looking at the man in the mirror, is how am I a contributor to these dysfunctions? And as we break each of these down and we look at specific behaviors, and we're going to look at, for each of these dysfunctions, what does a healthy functioning team look like? What are the actual behaviors you'll observe versus what does an unhealthy or a lesser functioning team look like, and what do those behaviors look like? It's easy, and there are areas that I struggle with as well, and I'm trying to really be much more intentional about it. It's really easy to point the finger at someone else with levels of dysfunction without asking ourselves first, okay, where might I be contributing to this? And sometimes they're in ways that seem positive. So we're going to look at these things. So I just ask for you to kind of think about this through a few different lenses as we go. The first dysfunction is the absence of trust. And that's the fear of being vulnerable with team members, preventing the building of trust within a team. So I just want you to reflect right now, how many of you are on teams right now where you can feel like you can be completely professionally vulnerable with your teammates? You can be absolutely honest with them without fear of repercussion, without being concerned about a consequence coming into play, without being worried about how they're going to respond. And this is very true. 2 reasons I trust people: I don't know them, or I know them. So we're going to look at first at some things that show mistrust. Teams that are not trusting of one another conceal their weaknesses and mistakes from one another. They don't want to be honest when they mess up. or they want it to look like they might have messed up, but they don't want it to be shown how big of a mistake it was. They don't want to look like they're not competent. They don't want it to look like they're not human, or that they fail or they make mistakes or errors sometime. They hesitate to ask for help from others. And they also hesitate to provide constructive feedback due to fear of repercussions. They hesitate to help outside their own areas of responsibility. And they jump to conclusions about the intentions and aptitudes of others without attempting to clarify them. So that's a big one. A lot of times we don't give people the benefit of the doubt, and we jump to what we think is happening, or what we hear is happening, or what others tell us is happening, or what it looks like is happening, versus instead of giving somebody the benefit of the doubt and thinking that they're probably coming from a positive standpoint, and that, you know, and thinking that they have the best intentions as opposed to intentions that are not as honorable. They fail to recognize and tap into one another's skills and experiences. Everything's got to be protected. Like, my talents have to be protected. I can't weigh on your strength because it might highlight my weakness or my area of development. They waste time and energy managing their behaviors for effect. So I may walk around and I may seem confident, and I may look confident, and I may look like I'm being productive. But am I doing that? Am I like managing my own behaviors, or am I really doing the work? Or am I wanting it to look, or am I wanting my professional image to look a certain way? Teams that have the absence of trust often hold grudges, and they dread meetings and they avoid spending time together. So consider this. How many of your teams right now are you like, a meeting comes up and you're like, I cannot wait to go to this meeting. This is going to be fabulous. We're going to get things solved. This is going to be great. Or are you like, another meeting? Fabulous. That could have been an email. How are you feeling about it? How are you feeling about your colleagues? Are you willing to bring the tough issues out on the table when you're all together? So let's look at some things that trust is. Some of the signs that you have that on a team. They admit weaknesses and mistakes. They ask for help from their teammates. They'll say, hey, you know, this isn't working. I'm not sure why. You think you can help me look at this in a different way? What do you think I might be doing? They accept questions and input about their area of responsibility. They realize that their teammates are coming from a place where they're looking at your behaviors and your actions. They're not looking at you as a person. They're not coming at you to attack you as a person. They're only looking at actual actions. They give one another the benefit of the doubt before they jump to a conclusion. They offer feedback, even if it's tough feedback. They lift one another up. They tap into your strengths, and they're comfortable with you tapping into theirs. Really, really important. They focus their time and energy on the really big issues, not the back channel politics. They apologize willingly and easily and genuinely and sincerely. And they look forward to working with everybody as a group, and they look forward to meeting. So as you think about these very, very specific behaviors, think about your teams. Think about the teams you've worked on that may have had these types of behaviors present or who have not. And think also, you know, what part do I play in this? How could I be adding to a strong, trusting team? Or how might I be adding to a team that's not as trusting? And what can I do about that? So this is an age-old exercise, but I want to bring it to you, and I want to bring you the why behind it. So it's time for another poll. This is an exercise you can take back to your teams if you haven't heard about it before. You state, two truths about yourself and one fallacy, one lie. And your other team members have to guess which is the untrue statement, but you can't make it obvious. So we're going to open up another poll now. We're just going to give you the example. I'm using myself as an example for this, just because, just to give you an idea of what this looks like. And then we're going to build into another exercise after you do this with your teams that you can go into that's going to help trust build even more. So weigh in on the poll, 2 truths and a lie. And this is about me. I've traveled to or through 30 US states. I used to have 33 body piercings and I have 5 tattoos. I met my former husband on eHarmony. Which one is the untrue statement? Give you about 30 seconds more to weigh in. All right, you're getting there. It's about 60 more people left to vote. I always love seeing these results. It's kind of cool to see them on a poll. In the meantime, be thinking as you're answering the poll. Some of you know me, some of you don't. But just based on the information I've provided you, are there any ways that you're able to connect with me in this? Are there any ways that you see any commonalities? Are there any things that you think that surprise you just based on my appearance? So kind of consider that with me, consider that with your colleagues. All right, about 10 more seconds and we're going to go ahead and end the poll. All right. So everybody thinks that there is absolutely no way, not everybody, the majority of you think there is absolutely no way that I could have ever had that much body art. Some of you don't think I've been through 30 states, and some of you don't believe that I met my former husband on eHarmony. So for this piece, the fallacy is that I have not traveled to or through 30 states. I did meet my former husband on eHarmony. One of my family members has always said that I met him on eBay. And I did used to have 33 piercings and I do have 5 tattoos. Back in college, I was really interested in body art and I studied a lot of different tribes, a lot of different areas of the world, a lot of different forms of body modification. I was really curious about why people did what they did, and not that I would do all those things, but I was really curious about the why behind it, and you know, different coming of age ceremonies and different things. And I studied it a lot. And so that is actually true. So I'd be curious at a later to see. You're more than welcome to write in the chat box for later viewing. I'm sure that surprised some people, but that's the why behind it. So consider doing something like this with your teammates and consider the things that you could learn about them. And consider that when we share things like this, we find that we have commonalities or different interests or things that somebody else has done, you're like, whoa, tell me about that. I want to hear more about that. Commonalities bring us together. And they start to get us at a personal level to talk and to communicate and to open up. So as you're considering this exercise, I want to bring you to another exercise that you can use with your team afterward. And that's the personal histories exercise. During a team meeting, you would ask each team member to explain, 1, where they grew up, 2, how many kids were in their family, and then 3, what was just the toughest thing of just surviving as a kid, just being a kid, not your inner child here, just what was tough for you about being a kid. And I would like to read you one woman's answer when her team, this happened with her team. And I just want you to consider, 1, with the first exercise that we did, and then 2, going into this, how sometimes we don't take the time to find out enough about each other, and that can impact the level of trust that we're able to have with our team. And again, it's because sometimes we are making judgments based upon things we may not know. I once worked with a woman who didn't seem to get along with her peers on an executive team. She rarely smiled or made eye contact. Her colleagues had come to the conclusion that she didn't like them and that she didn't want to collaborate with them, until we did the personal histories exercise. Okay, she began cautiously. I grew up the only child of a 3-star general who was a rigid disciplinarian. We lived overseas for most of my childhood. I became a world-class concert violinist, but whenever I received recognition or awards for my music, my dad would try to knock me down a peg or 2 so that I didn't get a big head. It was as though she had just revealed that she was a Martian. Suddenly, everyone now had something they could attribute her behavior to, other than her dislike for them. So consider what could be going on, or what could be shaping the people that you work with on your team. What experiences have they had? What could be impacting how they operate with you? And is it important enough for you to take the time to learn and find out and to talk? And we have spent more time on trust, because going into these next ones, if you do not have the level of trust, it will heavily influence everything else, the growth that you're able to make in every other level. The next dysfunction, the second dysfunction, is the fear of conflict. The fear of conflict, and I want you to pay really close attention to this definition, is the desire to preserve artificial harmony, which prevents the occurrence of productive conflict. And I am sure that many of you are familiar with the meetings that we go into, and we have the meeting, and there are things that are talked about, and there are things that we may highly disagree with, or we may have questions about, and we don't speak the questions in the meeting. We sit, we smile, maybe we don't smile, maybe our face says it for us, but we don't speak. We don't comment. We don't ask the question. And then after the meeting, we have the meeting after the meeting, right? Like, did you seriously just hear that in the meeting? Did you just really? So in the meeting, we keep it with artificial harmony, which means we don't speak to the issues at hand in a professional way where we feel comfortable asking in order to address conflict. And why don't we do that? Typically, because there's a level of trust that isn't there. And typically because we're worried about potentially our jobs. We're typically worried about how others or our supervisors will view us. We're typically worried about maybe receiving some backlash or being told that we are not educated enough, we don't know enough about something to say, make a comment on it. And this quote is really powerful. Actively listening, taking seriously, and showing a desire to resolve the conflict is much more likely to be successful, even if it requires some effort and engagement. Because at the end of the day, angry people, like bullies, just don't go away. So as you think about conflict, one of the most difficult challenges that a leader faces in promoting healthy conflict is the desire to protect members of the team from harm sometime. But consider this. So we all are very familiar with working with young children. And we all know what children need. And so I'm going to ask you to consider the parallel process in this. When a leader desires to protect members of the team from harm as it relates to healthy conflict, this leads to a premature interruption of disagreements. It prevents team members from developing coping skills for conflict themselves. What do we want children to do? We want them to be independent in solving their own problems. We want to be the facilitator to help them so that they can solve their own problems. We want to guide them so that they can do it themselves. This is not unlike parents who protect their children from quarrels or altercations with siblings. And if you don't allow the conflict to happen in a healthy setting, the real issues aren't resolved. And no one learns how to resolve conflict for themselves. So we're going to look a little bit about some of the negative things that creating conflict. Those teams that are afraid to create conflict, some of those things that happen. Again, we conceal weaknesses and mistakes from one another. That was one of the same items mentioned in a lack of trust, the absence of trust. They have boring meetings. Why? Because there's no conflict. Everybody's shaking their head, nodding, doing what they're told, and not asking relevant, productive questions in relation to the goals and objectives or the clarity that they need to move forward in a healthy, productive way as a member of the team. They create an environment where back-channel politics and personal attacks thrive.
Yeah.
This is a lot of where your gossip comes in, your toxic environment.
She was speaking there.
This is also where a lot of assumptions are made because we don't get things out on the table at the time. We don't ask the questions in front of the whole so everyone can learn. We take the information that we have and then we go back and then we talk. And we don't have all of the information. It's like, having a 500-page novel. And you might have 5 pages of it, but we're assuming what happens at the end of the story. We ignore controversial topics that are absolutely critical to team success. It's the whole sweeping the elephant, under the rug. Like the elephant's in the room, but everybody's ignoring it. They're not bringing it out to the table so that it can free up space. They fail to tap into the opinions and perspectives of all team members. And there's a lot of this interpersonal posturing and risk management where we're at face value acting one way, but we're really feeling another way. So these are some of the behaviors that you may notice in a team that fears conflict. Now let's look at a team that is willing to have the healthy conflict, values it, knows that the only way to really permanently solve issues is to engage in that healthy conflict. These teams have lively, interesting meetings. Why? Because they're addressing the issues. They're bringing them out on the table. They may have to schedule another meeting for the rest of the stuff because this issue needs to be talked about today. everybody needs to weigh in. All the ideas of every team member are asked for, and they're not asked for, they're heard. And it doesn't mean that everybody's decision is going to be the final decision. It means that their ideas are elicited, they're asked for, they're invited, they're welcomed, and they are heard. The real problems are actually solved very, very quickly. There are minimal politics because the issue's brought right out onto the table, and it ensures that you're looking at critical, important issues. You're not looking at all of the parking lot things that can tend to distract us. You're identifying what the actual issue is that needs to be solved, and you're eliciting everybody's feedback, and you're challenging each other, and you're saying, well, you know, I hear what you're saying, but what would happen if? Or you're saying this piece, I can see how this piece would work, but I'm not sure about this piece. And this is why. You have to be able to disagree. It's okay. And it's okay to talk about it. And teams that engage in conflict are not, when they challenge each other, when they ask each other questions, it's not attacking somebody personally. It's looking at a behavior, it's looking at a pattern, it's looking at an issue. They care about you personally. They want, your team members should be coming from a place that they want to see you grow. They want to see you develop. They want to see you succeed, so that all members of the team can succeed as well, and because they care about you and what happens to you as a professional. And so you don't have to survive another meeting that should have been an email.
Hi, Cara. We have a question. Fonda asked, what do you do about the fear of retaliation in terms of conflict?
That is a super good question. And that is one that comes up a lot. And that is one that, you know, I could give you the warm fuzzy answer, but I'll give you the real answer. The real answer is that you do have to, it is tough to bring up the real issues if you sincerely have a fear of what can come down from your mid or upper level leadership. If you don't have that level of trust, or you have seen or witnessed or observed things that have happened that don't promote that level of trust, that's a really tough place to be in. And I am someone who will typically still bring up the issue, but that's not everybody, because we all have a job that we need to support our families. These are all extremely, extremely important things, but you need the integrity of your upper level or mid-level, whatever your leadership is, that integrity needs to be in place at the top for all of this to operate, because we know leadership matters. It's a trickle-down effect. You can have some of the best team members, and if your leadership is not of the motivation, of the integrity, of the ethical and moral and value system that they need to be, it can be tough. And I know that's probably not the answer that you wanted to hear, that you were looking for, but that's important to be in place. So typically, I would say if it's something that I could consistently not trust, then I myself might consider other options where I could have that honesty and level of vulnerability with my upper level leadership and have that basis of trust. But it's also not something that you can't do with your teams, because I've seen many teams operate in smaller groups, smaller subsets, where there's one overarching team and then there are smaller teams. I've seen extremely high levels of trust among smaller teams. even if it's still a work in progress at other levels. And feel free to weigh in if you agree, disagree, vehemently disagree, absolutely think it is not true. You know, feel free to weigh in. I'm open to anybody who feels that, you know, this, I want to make this as engaging as possible, because it is virtual and that's tough. All right, another poll. So we've been talking about conflict, right? Healthy conflict. And we're going to be going into an exercise that's, I really hope, is going to help you. So when it comes, but for now, when it comes to addressing conflict, I might make someone cry. I'm going to my office to hide, or somewhere to hide. I don't necessarily like it, but I feel confident in handling it. I would absolutely rather have open heart surgery than engage in healthy conflict, or engage in conflict of any sort. Tell me your thoughts. A lot of you feel really comfortable handling conflict. You don't like it, but that's encouraging to hear. Normally that number isn't this high. And it's okay if you're not in that category. Not everybody is. That's why we're all made differently. It'd be a pretty boring place if everybody were the same. You might send someone out in tears. Some of you might be the ostrich and stick your head in the sand, go anywhere to hide. And some of you just cannot do it. Yeah, just do not like it at all.
Hi, Cara. I didn't know if you could see any of the chat right now. People are agreeing with you and leaving comments about conflict, such as, you know, it's, I'm sorry, they're really talkative, so it's actually moving up pretty quickly. One of the things
I could read all these. I promise everybody I will read it afterward. I'm going to read every word.
Yes, so there's a lot of good feedback coming in right now.
That's awesome. Thanks for the encouragement, Jessica. My cheerleader. All right, I'm going to give like 10 more seconds for people to weigh in. It looks like there's about 40 people. About 80% of you guys have voted. If anybody else wants to weigh in, and then we'll go ahead and share the poll results. I'm excited to share this next tool with you because I think it's really going to be helpful. Okay, in the essence of time, because I'd rather have more time for questions at the end than not enough, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. All right, so here we go, guys. So a few of you are going to probably send someone out in tears. Some of you are going to take the nearest door, bathroom, kitchen, storage closet, and find that and just lock the door. It's a large amount. I mean, this is great. I really don't typically see some of these results. I love to see from it because you guys are so, most of you all are leaders here, that you don't like it. And I'm in that category. I don't like necessarily conflict, but feeling pretty competent in handling when you need to and knowing it's necessary. So that's awesome. And some of you, it is just not your thing. And that's okay. Like it's okay to have differences. So we're going to look at how we can build on some of these things. Well, I can close. There we go. Close the poll. So let's look at this. So I'm not sure how many of you might be familiar with this. And this is called the Thomas-Kilmann conflict style background. So there are actually conflict styles, and they typically fall into 5 categories. And you can see the quadrant here. It goes from, on the vertical axis, it goes from unassertive in your conflict style to assertive. And then on the horizontal axis, you go from uncooperative to cooperative. So you can see, typically, your most ideal conflict style, you want to be collaborating. That's the most ideal. Compromising is probably comes in there second. It's our competing, avoiding, and accommodating that we kind of want to look at, you know, what could we do? How can we grow? What can we do differently? And this is okay. These are like, you know, our personality styles, our leadership styles. There is no one who is ever ultimately like, I've reached that status. I am that leader. I don't have anywhere else to grow. I'm fabulous. Like, you've reached Jesus level at that point. So it's not going to happen. You're always going to be growing. You're always going to be learning. And I can tell you, when I began in leadership, I was closer to the competing style, and I had a lot of learning to do, and I had a lot of self-reflecting to do, and I had a lot of hearing about myself. Like, you know, people say, like, you know, like, and I would do a lot of assessments. I'd ask people for a lot of feedback on my leadership style, and I needed to hear a few things about myself. It's where I started. It's not where I am now. It's how I've grown, and I am still in a lot of different ways learning. And a lot of that is knowing the team that I'm serving or the team that I'm working with as well. So I'm really excited about this tool for you all. I'm going to give you just an overview of what these look like. So I should have done a poll for this, but, you know, thinking about it now, but in the future, I might do a poll for this. So I want to give you a little bit about what this might look like. If you were a competing style, if that's what you found out about yourself, this is typically more assertive and uncooperative. An individual pursues their own concerns, possibly at another person's expense. It's a more power-oriented mode, in which one uses whatever power seems appropriate to win one's own position, one's rank, or economic distinctions. Competing might mean standing up for your rights, or defending a position which you believe is correct. Or it might just mean simply trying to win. So when you listen to these, listen for the strengths as well as the areas of development. Every single one of these has strengths. And a lot of my competing style used to be, and still is, honestly, defending a position in which I believe is correct. But sometimes in the past, I was simply trying to win. And that doesn't benefit anybody. So there are areas of strength in all of these. So listen to it through a strengths-based lens, as well as what might be developed and how others might perceive this. And think about yourself, and then consider that people on your team may have a very different style. And how are you going to come together and talk about conflict and conflict resolution, and how to bring things out on the table in a vulnerable way, knowing that you have different styles? The accommodating person is typically unassertive and cooperative, the opposite of competing. When accommodating, an individual neglects their own concerns to satisfy the concerns of the other person. There's an element of self-sacrifice in this mode. Accommodating might take the form of selfless generosity or charity, obeying another person's order when one would prefer not to, or yielding to another person's point of view. So they might have a really great perspective. They might have something that really needs to be heard, but they might just allow the stronger opinions to lead over that and not bring their own opinion to the table when it needs to be there and it needs to be heard and it needs to be valued and weighed in and reflected on. Avoiding is more unassertive and uncooperative. The individual does not immediately pursue their own concerns or those of the other person. They don't address the conflict. Avoiding might take the form of diplomatically just sidestepping an issue, or postponing an issue until a better time, or simply withdrawing from a threatening situation. Those are kind of your ostriches, the ones who stick, you know, go hide, stick your head in the sand. This isn't the best time. I'm going to wait until, you know, she's not as tired or she's not as hungry, or, you know, this was a really tough meeting. I'm going to wait until like everything settles down. And there is a value in timing. Understand that there is a value in handling things in a timing that makes sense. But there is also a line between handling things in a appropriate and reasonable way at a time that makes sense, and not handling them all at all, or pushing them to the side, or sweeping them under the rug, or not addressing. Collaborating is both assertive and cooperative. It's the opposite of avoiding, and it involves an attempt to work with the other person to find some solution which satisfies the concerns of both people. It means digging into an issue to identify the underlying concerns of both individuals or the team, and finding an alternative that meets both sets of concerns. Collaborating between two people might take the form of exploring a disagreement to learn from each other's insights, concluding to resolve some condition that might have otherwise had them competing for resources if they hadn't had this conversation. And they're confronting the issue and trying to find a creative solution to an interpersonal problem. And that's your ideal. That's kind of where we want to grow toward. And then there's compromising. So this is kind of an intermediate, like a mid-level assertiveness and mid-level cooperativeness. So the objective is to find some sort of like mutually acceptable solution that partially satisfies both parties. You know, like kind of like I'll meet you in the middle type thing. And it does fall on a middle ground between competing and accommodating, though. Compromising gives up more than competing, but less than accommodating. It addresses an issue more directly than avoiding, but it doesn't explore it as much as collaborating. Compromising might mean splitting the difference, exchanging concessions, or coming to a quick middle ground, you know, whereas collaborating is really confronting the issue and trying to find that creative solution to the problem that each of you has, where you're really looking at it through a different lens to resolve it. So that's a little background on what those styles look like. I'm going to share with you, and you'll have, so I'm just going to walk you through a little bit. There is an attachment that you have called the Thomas-Kilmann conflict style assessment. What it has is questions for your team. And I can't remember how many there are. There are about 2 pages. And for every one, you have your team members and yourself go through and you choose A or B. Now these are, if you are like me, I am the most over-analytical person. I will think something until I kill it. Don't do that. This is like, you go one at a time. Read it, A or B. Read it, A or B. Don't think on it too long. Don't overanalyze it. Don't call your friends about it. Don't Google it. Don't research it. Just do it fast. And then score it. And then bring it back. Look at your style. Talk about your the styles with your team, and really have some real conversations about how you all approach conflict, because it can absolutely change your world in terms of how you can resolve issues. And if you handle it the right way, it's amazing how even trust can be built in having these conversations. Okay, the next is a lack of commitment. This is the complete lack of clarity on where we're going as a team, and or the fear of being wrong preventing team members from making decisions in a timely and definitive way. This is one of my favorite quotes. Be decisive. Right or wrong, make a decision. The road of life is paved with flat squirrels who couldn't make a decision. So let's talk about what this looks like from a team standpoint. A team that more so is not, they're lacking commitment essentially. There is a vagueness among the team about the direction and the priorities. What are our goals? What, I might see what my mission statement says. I might read what my vision statement says. What does that look like? Have our leaders and have our leaders been clear about telling us what that looks like? As a team, are we clear about the direction that we are headed? Do we know the goals and objectives we are trying to hit? We may watch windows of opportunity close due to excessive analysis and unnecessarily delay. There's a breeding of a lack of confidence and a fear of failure. Discussions are revisited again and again and again. How many of you who have been to the meeting that addressed the same content from the meeting last week, that is a repeat of the meeting last week, that you've already scheduled another meeting to discuss the same issues and you are still spinning your wheels, or been on a committee or a work group, or in an alliance or an organization where they're trying to solve issues and the wheels are spinning and it seems like they're stagnant, like they're just not making forward movement. And it encourages second guessing among team members. And let's look at what commitment is. All team members, all team members have clarity around their direction and the priorities. They know what is expected of them. They know the goal they're trying. It doesn't mean that there's an A, B, C way to get there. There is more than one way to peel an onion, as the saying goes. It doesn't mean that there is micromanagement. It doesn't mean that they are told how to do it. But where we are trying to go is clear to everyone, as well as the options for how we can get there. They develop an ability to learn from mistakes. And that's part of the trust. When you have think about children, again, parallel process with children. What happens when you create a safe place for children to make mistakes? They might make them, they're still gonna make them, right? Some of them will be smaller, some of them will be bigger. But you have created a safe place for them to make mistakes and to learn from them. Versus them feeling judged, like they are not competent, like they are not doing enough, that you're taking the time to coach them. Our job as leaders is to what? The primary job we have as leaders, to develop other leaders, right? To continually grow others who will put us out of a job, who will be those successors. It's not, a competition. Creating a safe place where there isn't this feeling of everybody's feeling threatened by everybody else's abilities. Understanding that we are all human. We are all going to fail. We are all going to make mistakes, but when you fail forward, you're learning. Taking advantages of opportunities before competitors do. Moving forward without hesitation, and the ability to pivot. I put this on here with Michael Jordan because it's the image of, pivoting in basketball. It doesn't mean you have a complete always change of direction, but it means you're flexible. One foot is firmly planted while the other foot shifts, helping you turn your body in a different direction to look at things through a different lens, so that you can consider which direction makes the most and healthiest sense and is best for your organization to go. So consider this. And I wanted to share something with you. When you think about people really getting vulnerable, really developing an opportunity to learn from mistakes, really being able to talk and have real conversations, this is what it can sound like. So this is a team, and they're going around, and this is after they've started to develop some trust with each other. They started to engage in healthy conflict, and they're starting to really see how they can learn from their areas of development and be vulnerable with their teams. And in this exercise, this team was asked, every team member was supposed to share their biggest strength, their single biggest strength, and their single biggest weakness in terms of their contribution to their organization's success or failure. So in your head, what is the biggest strength you bring to your team and to your organization? And what is the biggest way that you're contributing to an area of weakness for them? So consider it. So this team member says, and this is what this can sound like, and I say this is what this can sound like is because I've heard this in actual teams with actual people talking. I'm reading you a story, but I've heard this in actually working. So finally, Nick broke the ice. I'll go. Okay, let's see. He reviewed his notes. My biggest strength is my lack of fear when it comes to negotiation and management of outside companies. Whether they're partners or vendors or competitors, I don't have any problem pushing them to do more than they want to do. My biggest weakness, however, is that I sometimes come across arrogant. A few of Nick's peers laughed a little nervously. He smiled and continued, yeah, I've had that problem since I was in college and probably before that. I can be sarcastic and even rude at times, and sometimes I come across like I think I'm smarter than everybody else. And that might be okay, I suppose, if I'm dealing with vendors, but with my team, with you guys, it could probably piss you off a little, which I don't think is going to help us get where we want to go. And his colleague commented, it sounds like your strength and weakness are rooted in the same things. And another colleague said, yeah, isn't that usually the case? So they just had a raw, real conversation. It was not an attacking conversation. It was a reflective conversation. And these are the things that have to happen before you can commit, can really engage in commitment and moving forward, and an ability to pivot, knowing you might not get it right. And it might happen a few times, but you are winning as a team, you are losing as a team, and you are committing to things together. Here's an exercise for you to take back. This is a commitment exercise. First thing you would do is you would write down an issue that needs you to set a committed direction for your team. It can be it doesn't have to be this major thing that can be solved, is going to be solved in next year or long term. It can be a smaller issue. But write down a current issue that needs you to set a committed direction for the team that you're working with. This could be your upper level. This could be a smaller subset of a team. Begin with the potential worst case scenario and outcome. This is me. I am overthinking everything all the time. I'm like, well, if this happens and this could happen and this happens and then this could happen. And by the time I'm done, the whole world is ending. But consider worst case scenario. If this doesn't work, if we go this direction and it doesn't work, what would happen? Then write down what needs to be done to move forward in the most effective direction and set a deadline. And make it, as you're thinking about this, I know you guys have heard the term SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Think about the SMART goal aspect as you're thinking about this. The fourth dysfunction of a team, and oh, this is a big one: avoidance of accountability. This is the one I'm probably a poster child for 3 of these: absence of trust, fear of conflict, and avoidance of accountability. And those that know me are probably snickering. But the avoidance of accountability is the need to avoid personal discomfort, preventing team members from holding one another accountable for their behaviors. Doesn't say leaders holding everybody accountable for their behaviors only. It says that team members are holding one another accountable. Be a yardstick of quality. Some people are not used to an environment where excellence is expected. That is one of my favorite Steve Jobs quotes. So what does this look like? What does it look like when teams avoid accountability? So first, it creates resentment among team members who have different standards of performance. Those who are high performing, achieving consistently, are going to start to get a little ticked off that the ones who are not the higher performers are flying under the radar, and that the behaviors, and it's not the people, we're not looking at people in this, we're looking at performance and behaviors and patterns and actions. We're not ever attacking a person. But they're going to get a little frustrated that those people are flying under the radar, and that sometimes that what they're doing is not being noticed. It encourages mediocrity for that reason, because it does not set the standard at a high level. It's not expected coming in. Think about programs that you've been in or worked in over the years. And it's some of the reasons sometimes our teachers don't always know, don't always understand what it's like to work at a specific level of quality. Because if you look around you and no one else is doing it, and they're not held accountable for doing it, then it frustrates those who are doing it, and they don't feel, and then their performance may not continue to be as high over time. Because why do it? Why go above and beyond if nobody's going to notice? Why do it when those who are not, it's accepted, it's being, and again, not addressing it is also communicating acceptance. If we don't address it, if we don't engage in that conflict, ignoring it is a form of accepting it and approving it. They miss deadlines and key deliverables, and they place, y'all, if you don't get anything else, it places an undue burden on the team leader as the sole source of discipline. Your leader, whoever your immediate leader is, needs to be able to do their job. They're the ones who are leading your team to success. They're the ones who are making some really big decisions. They're the ones you're wanting to have this trust and this healthy conflict with. And if they're putting out fires all the time, they can't do their job. And guess what happens when you hold somebody accountable? Guess what happens when you go and you're in a classroom and you say, hey, like I care about your job. We're not supposed to be on our cell phones right now. That we're in the supervision of children. I don't want you to lose your job. And if I don't say anything, I'm just as accountable. Would you like me to call the office and get somebody to grab a phone for you? I know your child's at home sick. I know you're worried. And if you have that level of trust, you can hold each other accountable. Or if there's something on your end that's keeping me from doing my job, that's impacting me. Hey, I know you have a lot going on. When do you think you can get this to me? Because if I'm not able to do this, then this is what the impact's going to be. And this is going to be how it affects the organization. Holding each other accountable. It keeps our leaders being able to do their jobs. It keeps you as lead. Gosh, the things it can take. Think about the fires that you guys may put out every day. Think about it. Your role is not to put out fires. Your role is to facilitate and nurture and support an effective, well-oiled machine. Your role is to develop others. Your role is to coach and support and provide professional development and to provide supervision in a safe atmosphere. That takes a ton of time. And when team members hold each other accountable, that sets a standard coming in. When you look around and everybody is holding each other accountable, guess what? You're gonna feel the pressure to perform at a higher level. So let's look at what the behaviors of a team that does engage in accountability. It ensures that poor performers feel the pressure to improve. It identifies potential problems quickly by questioning one another's approaches without hesitation. And it establishes respect among team members who are held to the same high standard. And some of the red tape and the political back channel stuff, it mitigates that. And again, sometimes it's in a, if we don't address it, we think we're just not addressing it, or it's not our place, or it's not the time. Sometimes we mean well, but we're not doing a great job of holding each other accountable. And again, it's not in a supervisory way, it's in a human, so that we can work best as a team and bring the results that we need as a team for those to be what they need to be. So this is an exercise you can take back with you. It's called the 3-3-1 feedback loop. You do this first individually, and then you do this first with your team. You write down 3 things you are doing really well right now. You're killing it. And then you write down 3 things you are not doing well. And be honest, don't sugarcoat these things. Don't make these little warm, fuzzy things that you wrap up in a really nice way. Like 3 things you're doing great at and that you're confident in, 3 things you just need to work on. And 1 area you need help in that you would really like help in. And then look at that from a team standpoint too, and talk about it. And the final dysfunction, an inattention to results. I'm just going to let this one sit for a moment. This is the desire for individual credit, breaking down the focus on the results of the team. That there's no I in we. It is not about you. Just gonna say that. So many teams break down because the focus is on, you know, coaches. Their job is not to build that one-star player. Their job is not to make that one-star player's professional career amazing. His job is to build a team, a winning team, a team that works together. You ever seen those teams where they have all of these amazing star players? Like they've recruited everybody. They've got like the world on their team for the best of the best, and the team fails. Why? Because they can't all work together. They're all kind of out for each other. They don't work well as a team. It's all about I. Teams like that will fail. So you win as a team, you lose as a team. And there is something quick I wanted to share with you on accountability that I saw. That again is a parallel process. We work with children, but this could apply to everyone. Some people are hard to hold accountable and give attention to individual results because they're so helpful. Others because they get defensive. Others because they're intimidating. I don't think it's easy to hold people accountable even when it's your own kids. And when people are not playing as a team, they're looking at only the attention and credit that they're going to gain. That's going to be an issue. Teams that focus on results retain achievement-oriented employees. The ones that don't, lose them. Your high performers, your top people are going to be leaving you. They minimize individualistic behavior. They praise people. They absolutely recognize individual accomplishments, but they look at how it impacts the team and what the team is doing as a whole that is good as well. There's a balance, and it's not just on what one or two people are doing or not doing. They enjoy success and suffer failure acutely. Again, you commit together and you win and you lose together. It's not, we have this great thing, we've done it, we did great, we're a team, we're amazing, and then we had this huge failure, and then it's these three people's fault. That's why we failed, because of them. You win and you lose as a team, and then you fail forward. You learn from it. What could we have done differently? What might have happened if we did this? And again, it's going to have hard conversations, but if you can develop that trust to have that healthy conflict, oh my gosh, what you could have in a team, man. And then again, integrity is huge in this. Integrity is huge, leaders, huge. If you have anything, operate with integrity. For your teams, for yourself, and then the teams that focus on results, they benefit from individuals who will make sacrifices for their team, but they know it's for the good of the team. It's something that they are doing because they know sacrificing on their own, it's not the same as the Thomas-Kilmann conflict style assessment where they're just letting it sweep under the rug. But they know that what they need is not the priority in that situation, it's what's best for the team. And they avoid distractions. So we have one more exercise that I've given you to take home. It's the 3C, 3 results compass. This is something you want to advertise. Write down 3 things your team has achieved in the last 30 days that you're really proud of. And 3 things you want to focus on. 3 things you want to do and make sure that you're placing more attention on. Place your positive results when you get back where they can be visible to the public. Brag about yourselves. A lot of things happen in classrooms, in programs, in buildings that are small and that are amazing and that are huge in terms of time and effort that people don't see, and they don't celebrate it because they don't see it. They don't know what's going on. I'm not saying be arrogant and cocky and I'm saying look at what you're doing well and celebrate those things. Celebrate your team. Celebrate the things your organization is doing. Look at what you need to focus on. Tell people what you're doing that's amazing, because sometimes they can't praise you if they don't know about it. And people often don't see the small things that we're doing every day that take a ton of time. They don't see it. They can't appreciate what they don't see. Talk about it. Broadcast it. Be proud of it. Final reflection. Now that you've heard what you've heard today, and I could spend a whole day on this, but I just can't. This is easily a full day training, but where do you think your team is currently? And how can you contribute to your team's ability to function at a healthier level? And if you would take a minute, type in the chat box your 2 greatest takeaways today from this session. And while you're typing in the chat box, the things that you may not have enjoyed about this session. This is where your constructive feedback of me can come in. Definitely tell me what's going great, because I want to continue those things. Tell me also what's not so great, or what you might do, or what you heard as a leader that you might suggest that I change. I want to know. I cannot get better at this unless I know. So please feel free to be very candid with me and raw. It's okay. Respectful preferably, but raw. But type in the chat box your 2 greatest takeaways from this session.
And I'll jump in and say, if the chat is as successful as it was earlier, we will get you all the chats.
That would be awesome. When I tell you, I take everything that you say and I weigh it in for my future presentations. This is, I mean, evaluations are a big deal to me. This is how I know if I'm on target or off, where I'm on, what I can get better at, because I want to do this well. And I cannot do it if you're not honest with me. So I appreciate whatever feedback you can give me.
And immediate feedback is the chats are coming in.
That's awesome. And thank you. I appreciate it. And it's easier to type than write. So you don't have to feel like you're taking a ton of time to write it out. You can just type it. That's great. Maybe you'll get more in. So how did we do? Look at the objectives. How did I do addressing those? How do you feel now that we've been through this, even though we could have spent so much more time? Oh, my favorite part. Okay, so we made it to the raffle. And you do have to be virtually present to win, but I'm so excited about this. I told you I love to bless others and I like to take the opportunity. So today, my blessing is, 3 prizes. You ready for the directions? So third place person will get a copy of the Overcoming the 5 Dysfunctions, you can't see it, team field guide for leaders and managers. This will be yours, third place person. Second place, you'll get the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team book, the hardcover book. It's amazing. Oh my God, you guys, get it, read it. My goodness, it reads like a fable. It's written like a fable. I couldn't put it down. Legitimately was at another conference, walking across the street, reading this book, not watching where I was going. I don't recommend that. Almost didn't stop to look before I walked across the street. Great book, amazing, gives a great things. And then the field guide that I just showed you, that's the one that has all the exercises. It breaks it down for you, all these different cool exercises for each dysfunction to use with your team at different levels as you go through this process. And then the grand prize winner will get both of them. So I'm so excited. So here's what you got to do. In the chat box, pick a number between 1 and 500. Scott already knows what that number is, so I'm not going to cheat. Pick a number between 1 and 500. The people closest to those numbers will get the prize.
And I'll jump in. These numbers are flying in. We will take it as a first come, first serve. These are all coming in order, and they're all being saved. We have your name and your email address from your registration. So they're just flying through. So we'll definitely go through this, and we'll even post the chat just to make sure it's all above board and official.
Fabulous. Well, when those all come in, those top 3, check your snail mail in the next week. I will be sending you those resources to use. If you would like, here's a list of those resources so that you can look at them yourself. I would recommend you going to a site like Thrift Books. I know everybody's Amazon everything right now, but there are some sites that sell used books at like $3 and $4. I mean, dude, save money while you can. They're pretty good books. I get them from there all the time, and they're in great condition. So you can find them cheaper. Also, Patrick's website, he is an author of some amazing other books that you may seriously want to check out. And I leave you with the supreme quality for leadership. I beat it to death that this training is unquestionably integrity. Without it, no real success is possible. No matter whether it's on a section gang, a football field, in an army, or in an office, integrity is everything.
Hey, Cara,
So,
can you repeat the used book site again?
oh yes, Thrift Books. Thriftbooks.com, I think it is. It's called Thrift Books, ThriftBooks. And Edward McKeown, used bookstore is another one you can sometimes find things at, but yeah, Thrift Books is good. Guys, one thing I want to say before I sign off here is this 5 dysfunctions is not an overnight process. It will not happen without consistency, and I can guarantee you that it'll get harder before it'll get easier. And sometimes when people start to feel that hard part, they stop with the consistency and they stop trying. Don't do that. It takes time. I have seen it happen. I've seen it happen within my own leadership, and I've seen it happen when I have been on a team with others. I've seen it